alcohol consumption, that culture, was brought into the spotlight following the death of 21 teenagers at the Enyobeni tavern. This is in East London last year. The tragedy has called for an amendment to the liquor bill. Now, this is to increase the legal drinking age from 18 to 21 years. As most schools are heading to the end of term, some of them, there are growing concerns about the pens down parties, the binge drinking that occurs there in the main by teenagers. Let's get some perspective now on the dangers of irresponsible alcohol use, particularly among the youth. And we are joined for this conversation by Dr. Mgwebi Msiya. He is with the Eastern Cape Liquor Board, and we are also joined by Nickolaus Bauer, a campaign manager for the DG Murray Trust's Alcohol Harms Reduction Program. Let me thank the both of you, gentlemen, for coming on to the show to discuss this matter. Very important one at that. Nickolaus Bauer, you recently penned an opinion piece, basically a news article where you decried the access to alcohol by young people. Just give us the essence of what your article spoke about, just so that Mr. Msiya is able to understand exactly what the concerns are here.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Collie, and good morning to the people of South Africa and the people watching internationally. A happy Youth Day. Unfortunately, it's a very somber June 16th, though, because let's look at the facts. Government may well use the day today to recommit to the plight of young people in South Africa, say that they're in their corner fighting for them. But that's really not borne out by action. And I use one example, that being the Enyobeni tavern tragedy. South Africa is beset by alcohol abuse, not alcohol usage. You know, we don't necessarily have a problem with alcohol in South Africa, but we have a problem with binge drinking and the abuse of alcohol. And really, unfortunately, a sad tale in South Africa's history is the Enyobeni tavern tragedy, where 21 young people lost their lives. We're almost a year down to the first anniversary of the Enyobeni tavern tragedy. There is a court case underway for the selling of alcohol to underage people, but nobody's been criminally charged for those 21 deaths. 21 young lives that will never, ever, ever be given back. 21 families at least that are never going to be able to look into the eyes of their young children again. And unfortunately, when you have a look at the legal framework in which alcohol exists in South Africa, the sale, the marketing, the distribution, we have laws on the statute that are just simply not being implemented. And if we did the basic things as a government by implementing the laws that are in the pipeline, maybe we could prevent tragedies like the Enyobeni tavern tragedy. I'll just point to two pieces of legislation and allow my co-panelist into the conversation there. Yeah. We've got the Liquor Amendment Bill of 2016. The name 2016 Liquor Amendment Bill says it all. It's gone nowhere in 7 years. It's now up for reconsideration once again. That would have severely curtailed the way that alcohol is marketed, the way that it's distributed, the way that it's sold in terms of in relation to schools, in relation to places of worship. However, it's stuck in the legislative mud, so to speak. Yeah. You go to another piece of legislation, the 2013 Control of Marketing of Alcoholic Beverages Bill. That's been stuck in the mud for over a decade after being approved for public comment. That was never actually released by the government in the government gazette for public comment, and that would have outright banned the marketing and advertising of alcohol in the same way that cigarettes and tobacco advertising was banned in the 90s. The critical point here, Polly and Gumby, is that government can say as much as it wants about supporting young people on June 16th and remembering 1976, but what are they living up to that lip service by actually implementing laws that protect young people from the scourge of alcohol abuse? That's my question.
That's a mouthful there from Nickolaus Bauer. Dr. Msiya, let's bring you into the conversation, and perhaps just a caveat. Nickolaus Bauer says no one has been criminally charged. At least we know that the owners of that Enyobeni tavern, I'm talking about Mr. Siya Kangela and his wife, Vuyokazi Ndevu, they are at the moment undergoing a court case, and some of the testimony there, one of the people testifying saying that the tavern owners watched young patrons die. Talk to us about whether you have been stringent enough as the liquor board in the Eastern Cape to police not only who alcohol is being sold to, but where these taverns are located.
Thank you so much, Chloe. Good morning to you and the viewers and my fellow panelist, Nickolaus. Chloe, let me first agree with the sentiments, with Nickolaus' sentiments in respect of the challenges that we are confronted with as a country when it comes to how our people relate to alcohol and the rising cases of alcohol abuse generally in our communities. I fully agree with that sentiment and the issues that relate to legislation, etc. Chloe, perhaps let me just indicate that as the Eastern Cape Liquor Board, we're still reeling from, what happened at Enyobeni Tavern. It really took us by surprise, and we were very, very disappointed. And we continue to extend really our word of condolence to the families, because what happened there was quite catastrophic. Yes, we have our liquor inspectors in terms of monitoring these liquor outlets, because what we're grappling with now really are the increasing cases of non-compliance by some of our liquor traders, and that problem being compounded again by those that sell outside the legislation, those that are not necessarily licensed. We have liquor inspectors that take responsibility to monitor, these liquor outlets. However, what we have always expressed is that we have quite a huge number of liquor outlets that we have licensed in the Eastern Cape. For example, we have more than 7,500 active liquor licenses that we have to monitor, each day. And against that, we have only currently 16 liquor inspectors that have to monitor that huge number of liquor outlets. So it makes it impossible for us to be able to monitor these liquor outlets on day-to-day basis. Hence, we always urge members of the community to assist us by reporting to us so that at least they can assist us to identify those that, violate the trading conditions and so on. But I think the biggest problem, like Nickolaus has indicated, really is underage consumption of alcohol in our province. That is why we ended up having that incident and in the Eastern Cape, the Enyobeni, and that was not the only incident. Whilst we're still reeling from that, we had another one in a small town called Hofmeyer, where again another 3 young people perished in a tavern. And it seems to us it's a very, very big problem. However, what we are saying is that perhaps as government, as the Eastern Cape Liquor Board, we cannot defeat this scourge. We really need to mobilize other members of society. Everyone really has to play a role, starting from the family, from the parents, schools, community leaders, etc. So there's a need for everyone in the society to play their role in trying to curb this challenge that we are confronted with as a country. As the Eastern Cape in particular. So, the new culture, if you may, of pens down is worrying us. It's really giving us sleepless nights. We have not rested as the Eastern Cape Liquor Board since the Enyobeni incident, because you'll recall that was all about young people celebrating the end of the examinations, under the auspices of pens down, etc. So we have not rested. We've continued to send messages to young people, discouraging them from this behavior, from these pens down, because they seem to be very problematic.
Yeah. All right. Nickolaus Bauer, you've heard what Dr. Msiya has had to say. This is the Liquor Board in the Eastern Cape. Legislation is there, and my sense from what he is saying is that you can amend it as many times as you may want, but the problem is that there's just too many of these liquor outlets to try and monitor, and therefore the main issue here perhaps has to do with public education around alcohol abuse, particularly by young people.
Well, yeah, I have to agree to a certain extent with that. We need an all-society approach when trying to deal with alcohol abuse and alcohol harm in South African society. That being said, though, our laws are only good as they're implemented. You know, they're only as good as their enforcement. So I can certainly agree that it's a massive problem to have a handful of inspectors, for instance, going around and monitoring the places that sell alcohol to ensure that they're doing things above board. But in the same breath, where is the police? Where is government ensuring that their laws are actually enforced?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the buck must stop with government completely. You need not only the civil society sector, like organizations like DGMT and indeed our partners that we're walking shoulder to shoulder with to try and stop the scourge of alcohol harm, but also indeed the private sector as well. I think the liquor industry needs to get real as well. Is alcohol abuse a long-term business plan? When their own research into alcohol harms and alcohol consumption show that a lot of their products are being sold in an unlicensed market. They have no way of actually knowing where the product that they're selling at a wholesale rate is ending up and ensuring whether or not that it's being consumed legally. So fully, there needs to be an all-society approach indeed, and a critical role needs to be played by parents as well.
Yeah.
The public needs to appraise itself with the facts around alcohol abuse. Like I said, we don't have a problem with alcohol consumption. We have a problem with alcohol abuse. A third of the South African population actually consumes alcohol, but the fact is that a half of that third consumes to such a rate that we have the 5th highest consumption rate per capita in the world.
Yeah.
It's nuts. And it is unfortunately driven by cheap and readily available alcohol. I'll leave you with one more thought. I don't know when last you bought a Lion Lager quart of beer, fully in Gumby, but that is cheaper than a loaf of bread. That's not normal. Go to other places in the world, especially in the so-called developed world, and you would not be able to find an almost liter of beer for less than the price of a loaf of bread. It's not normal, and it needs to change.
Dr. Msiya, perhaps that's where you come in, because part of what Nickolaus Bauer and the organization he speaks for have done is to look back at the studies that have been conducted. Listen to this. In a study on underage drinking, 49% of teenagers in South Africa reported having drunk alcohol under the age of 18. I understand there are many of these liquor outlets for you to monitor on a daily basis. However, what is it that, or let's perhaps put it to you this way, how many of these outlets would you say you are closing on a monthly basis purely because they are selling alcohol to minors?
Thankfully, perhaps before I respond to that question, I think coming closer to what Nickolaus actually referred to, our view clearly is that perhaps what we're seeing in society, how alcohol has become so normalized in our society, is a symptom of a bigger problem. We are saying there is a need to design a medium-term intervention strategy around the issue of underage drinking that will be accompanied by a lot of research so that we can understand what are the factors that reinforce this kind of behavior in our society. Why has our society generally become so normalized into alcohol, etc., etc.? So we're saying perhaps what we're doing now through these education programs, etc., is just to try to deal with the symptoms. We have not yet dug deep into understand what underlying circumstances that drive these kinds of behavior.
Dr. Msiya,
so,
can I just come in quickly, please? Let me yes. come in quickly there. Societal issues aside, sir, Nickolaus Bauer says perhaps one of the interventions could be that alcohol must be extremely expensive. It cannot be cheaper than a loaf of bread for teenagers to afford to buy. And so perhaps that's where you can immediately have an impact by just making the price of alcohol a little higher for young people to not be able to buy it.
I agree 100% with you, Tony. I understand where you're coming from with that, and Nickolaus. I agree. There's obviously a policy issue. Remember, as the Liquor Authority, our responsibility really is to implement the policy that will have been developed at a certain level. So that's a policy issue, and as the Liquor Authority, we have nothing to do with setting of prices, etc. So those are determined at the policy level. But I agree 100% with you, Tolly, that it could be one of the factors that we could perhaps use to reduce easy access to alcohol, because there's so much easy for our young people to access alcohol. Yeah. So it's one of the factors that could really be considered amongst other factors that we should actually take into account into trying to deal with this scourge in our communities.
Nickolaus, let's come to you. Any other immediate interventions that you think could stem this issue? Yes, societal issues aside, there is obviously public education that's got to be done on a much bigger scale, perhaps, but immediate interventions. You mentioned one, alcohol simply cannot be cheaper than a loaf of bread.
Polly, we don't have to reinvent the wheel on this one. The proposals that I'm about to mention are already largely contained in the Liquor Amendment Bill of 2016, and it's gathering dust in the halls of the national legislature. Those include complete banning of alcohol packaging and marketing that targets young people, an overall increase in excise taxes, the implementation of what's called a minimum unit pricing for alcohol. So that is basically based on the alcoholic content of a beverage. There's going to be a base price. It's going to prevent the type of things that I just spoke about. A lion lager beer quart being cheaper than a loaf of bread. That needs to stop immediately. Beyond there needs to be persistent and also strict monitoring of liquor outlets to ensure that they are operating within the ambit of the law. They also need to, these inspectors that are employed by various liquor authorities, they need to have stronger and more stringent powers to be able to shut places down. More often than not, a fine is just a cost of doing business that a tavern will work into its operating costs. And then lastly, we need to ensure that there is funding provided for school-based education programs and community outreaches that upskill our people as to where alcohol is in South Africa and what it does to the body. Essentially, we can't get past the fact that while there is an economic aspect to this, alcohol overall is damaging to the human body like tobacco. Yeah. We need to start getting real with the facts and need to pressurize government to act on already existing legislation. Like I said, this is not reinventing the wheel. We've got legislation out there that is just not being implemented. Oh. And in the run-up to the elections next year, I'd be keen to see what other political parties besides the governing party, the ANC, actually have to say. Because by what I've seen thus far, there's no approach, there's no official alcohol policy by any of the parties that are vying for votes in South Africa's election next year.
Dr. Msiya, let's allow you to have the last word, and very briefly, if you can. Perhaps talking high-level legislation, those things, sometimes they go way over people's heads. A simple question that I cannot neglect asking you here this morning is, do you have inspectors, people who go around into the liquor outlets monitoring what is being done there? And they obviously don't have to announce themselves. You can go there on an unannounced visit just as a patron to say, I'm trying to monitor what is being done here. And that's how you shut these places down. Do you have people who do that?
Yes, Tony, we do have inspectors that do exactly that make unannounced visits to these area liquor outlets, working closely with SAPS. However, as I indicated, we have a very small number, but that is what they do on day-to-day basis. So that is why we always encourage, remember, these liquor outlets are within communities. We're saying communities must also assist us. They must take responsibility to assist us in monitoring these liquor outlets, reporting them to us immediately. They identify any transgression, any wrongdoing. So communities for us, can play a very, very significant role in ensuring that, these liquor outlets are held accountable. Are held accountable for the actions that they take in the society. Yes, we have liquor inspectors. We conduct these operations almost every day, every weekend, working with SAPS. But that is not enough, because we still have to deal also with those that are selling, without legal licenses and all that. But we're trying our level best as the province to do that, to conduct this police operation. Each month, for instance, you will realize that we visit more than 20, 30 liquor outlets, illegal liquor outlets that we identify. But in terms of visiting the actual licensed liquor outlets, we visit more than 50, for example, per month, through our limited number of liquor inspectors.
Dr. Msiya, let me thank you very much for your time. He is with the Eastern Cape Liquor Board, and Nickolaus Bauer is with the DG Murray Trust's Alcohol Harms Reduction Program, a campaign manager there. Thank you to both of you.